Is it possible that you and I are aiding Satan in keeping our fellow humans in bondage? We're going to check it out today on Simply Stated. Hey, welcome back. Greetings and salutations, people. Today, I want to talk about an issue that affects everybody. And by affects us all, I mean we're all kind of guilty of doing it, to worse or less degree. But before I get too far, let me backtrack and give a little history behind it. When Jesus first started his ministry, after he had been tempted in the devil, he entered into the synagogue on the Sabbath, as was his habit, and he was handed a scroll, and he opened it and read Isaiah 42:7. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to declare the good news to the poor. He sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives and the recovering of sight to the blind, and to set at liberty those who are broken, and declare the acceptable day of the Lord. Now, as Jesus went about his ministry, there was a definite physical aspect to what he was doing. He healed a lot of people physically in their body, no question. But a great deal of what he was doing was spiritual in nature. He was delivering the demon-possessed and setting people free on a spiritual level. Now, a lot of people in the world think of the spiritual world as kind of an ethereal plane, not as tangible as the temporal world that we live in, perhaps even allegorical or psychological in nature, at least more so than an actual real place. But the truth is, it's very real. In fact, it's more real than the realm that we currently reside in. Because we hardly ever sense the spiritual realm and never see it, people believe that this temporal realm that we live in now is the real world. But the truth is, 180 degrees around, that the spiritual world is the real, substantial, firm, real, vibrant world. The world we live in is the dim, colorless, ethereal, vapory world in comparison. And most of us walk about, because we can't see into the spiritual world, believing that we are completely and utterly free, unaware of any spiritual hindrances that may impede our progress. If you were to ask most professional clergymen, like pastors, preachers, evangelists, hey, how are you going about? How are you setting the captives free? They would probably tell you that we're doing it by preaching the gospel and getting people saved. And i.e., save means like bringing them from the kingdom of the enemy into the kingdom of the Lord. And I would agree. That is a very good start. You're getting them out of the enemy's camp into the Lord's camp. But that's not all, because there's so many people in the church that come in, when they get there, their souls may be saved, but they bring all those chains with them. And some of them are completely encumbered in chains to the point where they're almost completely dysfunctional. And other people have just enough chains wrapped around their ankles to be a nuisance. In her book, The Heavens Open, Anna Roundtree had a vision with the Lord that I thought really illustrated this point really good about setting captives free, or how we're not setting the captives free, as the case most often is. In part of her vision, the Lord took her to what she described as the corrupted strata. And this was an area where the enemy kind of held sway. It was a little niche of an area that wasn't in heaven, it wasn't on earth. Oddly enough, she described it as murky, dank, smelly, kind of a swamp-like, dead trees. Jesus pointed out to her that the demons like it that way because they fear fire. He said they're even tormented by dry places. But as they walked along this disgusting river, to the side, Anna noticed some caves, and she could hear some people moaning and crying coming out of there. Jesus pointed out to her that those cries are coming from humans that have a portion of their life held in captivity by the demons guarding these caves. And they're being tortured in these areas that are held captive. Jesus pointed out that my people are participating in this misery, holding people in chains by taking pleasure in the downfall of another and laughing at the misery of other people. And this was, in a spiritual sense, tightening the chains and keeping them in captivity instead of setting the captives free. Anna was a little shocked, and she noted that instead of setting the captives free, Christians were agreeing with their jailers. Now, by siding with the jailers, and I would add, unbeknownst to most of us, they were in fact siding against the Lord and his provisions that he made for forgiveness and reconciliation. Oh man, right? That's how I felt the first time I kind of made this connection. Like, how guilty am I of this? different scenarios came to my mind. The pastor's wife who slept with the worship leader, or the pastor himself who was caught molesting children in his congregation, or the church treasurer who's kind of pilfering money out of the offering, or even out of the world, but the businessman, the greedy businessman whose business comes crumbling down and you're just kind of like, yeah, you got what you deserve. I'm sure I have nodded my head in satisfaction plenty of times thinking that they got what they deserved. Justice was served. Now, before people show up at my door with buckets of tar and feathers, I'm not saying that we should turn a blind eye to child molesters. Not at all. There are consequences to bad behavior and sin. And oftentimes those consequences are death. What I am saying, however, is that as long as they're alive in this plane of existence, this world that we live in, we should desire that they be free from the control and influence of the enemy, no matter how egregious their behavior is. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, that the enemy has few pleasures that he enjoys more than taking somebody created in the very image of the living God and twisting them into a horrible monster that in turn inflicts pain and suffering on other humans. Oh, that is one of his favorites, trust me. Now, not every human bound up in chains is a serial killer, an axe murderer, or a kitten raper. You know, the big terrible ones. A lot of them just suffer from day-to-day stuff that just makes them a little quirky, a little difficult. Sometimes it's just hard to get a leg up. Oftentimes it's just a little aspect in their life. For example, let's talk about fear. Some people are in bondage to fear. What does that look like? Fear controls their life and causes insecurity. Then that insecurity requires constant affirmation, and that affirmation requires a constant attention. And sometimes they don't care what kind of attention, even negative attention. So because they'll take negative attention, drama just swirls around their world and their life, and anybody that's close to them is getting impacted by this stuff. And if you think about it, you probably know some people like that. You know, some people call them life suckers or social vampires. You know, it's tragic, but I think, you know, we all can relate. There's people like that. My suggestion is not that you have to necessarily spend more time with them or take them under your wing, because short of actually breaking the chains, all we're really going to do is enable their dysfunction. What I am saying, however, is let's agree to stop agreeing with their jailer, and let's stop referring to them in the natural as we perceive them, you know, like idiot, dumbass, slut, douchebag, pervert, whatever the case may be, whatever it is about them that you find irritating. But rather, when you sense that irritation welling up, instead of agreeing with it or speaking it out or confirming it, let's speak against it with basically what is the opposite of that. Now, we don't need to necessarily do this to their face out loud, although that would be interesting. I'm reminded of a Simpsons episode. Here, check out the video.
Uh-huh. Well, you know what? I'm glad you're nervous, because that means we're on the right track. Uh-huh. 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 All right. Okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to hang up, call me back, and say the exact opposite of everything you just said. Goodbye. All right, Lisa, come over here.
What is it, Unky Herb?
I want you to hear what the guys down at the plant think of your old man. Yellow.
Homer Simpson is a brilliant man with lots of well-thought-out practical ideas. He is ensuring the financial security of this company for years to come. Oh, yes. And his personal hygiene is above reproach.
Whoa, I did great, Homer. I'm impressed.
Pretty good, huh?
We don't have to know all the specifics of their life. We don't have to delve into their childhood to find out where they were broken. Just proclaim freedom. Christ paid for it, and he deserves what he paid for. If the Holy Ghost shows you some specifics, by all means, agree with that, pray with that, speak it out. But for the sake of Jesus, let's stop agreeing with the enemy. Let's speak life and freedom to mankind. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps you, blesses you. I know it helped and blessed me when I finally made that connection. If it did, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe and hit like. And if you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. So I'll see you on the next one. Be blessed.